So first thing, I am not a Sanatani warrior. I do not have anything to do with any revolution or movement relating to Sanatana Dharma. I am doing what I should be doing as a practicing Hindu, that's it. And the reason why these clarifications become important is, आप जितना किसी एक व्यक्ति को या फिर किसी एक आदर्श को आदर्श के रूप में आप उसको देखते रहेंगे, आप उसको प्रैक्टिस में कभी नहीं लाएंगे. So the idea is to make this more relatable so that more and more people contribute to this. Allow me to also say this. I don't think Vishnu ji and I should be mentioned in the same sentence or the same breath for very good reason. I've barely done maximum of 10 cases across the board which relate to dharma. And that's a very conscious decision that I've taken. What Vishnu does is practically ideal. And what I do is ideally practical. Because I don't think I have what it takes to embrace the 100% approach that he does. Nevertheless, these are two models. Both are in front of you. Not role models, models of, let's say, Hindu action. What you wish to embrace and pursue is left to your choice, depending on your strength and your, let's say, levels of commitment. Frankly, the number of issues that he has raised in court, I haven't. I have a very particular, let's say, modus operandi in my headspace, and I'm working according to that. Nevertheless, I'm happy that you mentioned me in the same breath, although I don't think it should have been. Two, I would only request you to do one or two things when you leave this particular gathering today. Avoid the illusion of social media when it comes to these sensitive discussions. These are real-time survival existential discussions for us. This is not meant to score any kind of brownie points with your friends on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram or Quora or Reddit or any other platform. At least I don't take it that way. Because frankly, that's for kids. If you're serious about these issues, then there are three questions that I would want to focus on if I were in your shoes. One, does it matter to me seriously enough for me to think about contributing to it with my own skill sets? If yes, what are those skill sets? And how sustainably can I contribute to this? That's the basic question that you must ask. Beyond that, there is really nothing to be asked here. I don't think the exhortation here is for everybody to become activists or for everybody to become Hindu lawyers. Let me also say this. There are a lot of Hindu lawyers floating around the place. Vishnu actually represents a fantastic combination of competence and commitment. That is what he brings to the table. And I'll take the liberty of making this statement. If his commitment were 100%, but his competence was less than 50%, frankly, he wouldn't be making himself useful to the cause. In fact, he'd be detrimental to the cause. Because in a sensitive profession such as the law, sensationalism ki zarurat nahi hoti hai. What is important is serious committed prosecution. Let's say in the Indian judiciary, whether it's a civil matter or a criminal matter, by the time it reaches the end game, so to speak, dashak lag jate hain. So for someone to take up a matter of that sort, give it consistent representation for at least 2 generations now, please consider the kind of sacrifices it calls for. These are very real-time questions. I can make a few bombastic statements here, get a few claps, all of us can walk out with a high. But the question would be, what is the practical takeaway when we get out of this place? I give this example always that if you're like a soda bottle, the moment the goalie is out, that's the end of the energy. I don't see the point in actually engaging with such an audience because it's a waste of your time as well as my time. I'd rather look for a slow burn rocket which is basically going to last the long run, because the work that falls upon us as a consequence of inaction for generations together requires at least 2 generations of real hard work. 2 generations is being very conservative. When we keep saying Hindu Rashtra, Hindu Rashtra, Hindu Rashtra, I have to ask this basic question. When the first audience that we need to address is Hindus themselves, not the other, let's say, non-Hindus, imagine the kind of work that is being cut out for us. The first audience that needs to be catered to is at least 50% of the Hindu population. And when I say at least 50% of the Hindu population, that's a very optimistic figure. Ask yourself in college campuses and office spaces and families whether the first people to raise questions with respect to Hindu dharma in the case of Sabarimala or anything else, is it a non-Hindu or is it a Hindu? If it is a Hindu, then the problem lies within. Now, I think a question was raised by one of the gentlemen here, and I think it's a very valid question, that if the judiciary is anti-Hindu, what is the point of constantly going there and banging your heads? Wahan pe jaake aap sar kyun patak rahe hain? Basic question yahi hai. It's not a bad question to ask at all. I'll give you my own example, and I've consciously avoided using the Sabrimala example in my profile across the board because I don't want to be seen as milking that particular case for my publicity. So I'm keeping this very, very limited. The opinion of the Hindu Samaj in the context of the Sabrimala temple before and after the hearing changed radically. Because कोर्ट आपको एक प्लेटफॉर्म देती है एक मुद्दे के बारे में अपने पोजीशन को सामने रखने के लिए जो रिपोर्ट होता है पब्लिक में. जो प्राइम टाइम टेलीविजन डिबेट्स में जो तर्क बाहर नहीं आते हैं, जिनके जो लेयर्स और बारीकियां बाहर नहीं आते हैं, वो कोर्ट के सामने रखा जा सकता है और वो रिपोर्ट हो सकता है. लॉ स्कूल्स में बच्चे जो हैं इस केस के आर्ग्यूमेंट्स आज भी पढ़ रहे हैं और उनका मन इसकी वजह से बदल रहा है. देयर लाइक ओके, आई डिडंट थिंक ऑफ इट ऑन दीज लाइंस. सो never look at victory or defeat in the short term sense. It is a question of आप timelines को कितना expand करके देखते हैं. आज it can be a case of a defeat. 50 साल के बाद क्या होगा, किसने क्या देखा है. The tactic of infinite war जो जिहादियों का है, उससे कुछ तो सीखिए. तब तक आपकी हार नहीं हो सकती है जब तक आप हार नहीं मानते. If you think that the moment the Sabrimala case was done, all I got was only roses, I got brickbats equally after the outcome. So those, until the verdict, people who said क्या argument है, जैसे verdict आया, people said बच्चे को खड़ा कर दिया इसलिए ऐसे हो गया. Because I was 32 when I was arguing this matter in 2018. People did not remember that before me, a Dr. Singhvi had argued from our side and Sri Parasaran had argued from our side. When they were praising me, they forgot those two people. And when they were blaming me, they equally forgot those two people. So public memory and public wawahi is not what I am fighting for, because public memory is fickle and its allegiance is fickle. An audience which is capable of clapping for me can easily heckle me let's say at some point in the future. So I'm certainly not doing this for you people. Let me be very clear. I'm doing this in a very selfish way because that is the strongest possible incentive for any human being. I'm doing this to protect the culture that I grew up with, period, which I have benefited from. I'm doing this to protect all my childhood memories of having celebrated Hindu festivals. I'm doing this to protect or preserve whatever remains of my childhood nostalgia. To say that I will not let things change to a point where my childhood looks like a dream from a different planet altogether. That is something that I will not allow. That's the only sankalp that I have taken. Now, whether I win or lose, ultimately, as the Gita says, is certainly not my control. My job is to do whatever I have to, which I will do. Now, what is it that you can do if you really want to seriously contribute? One, there is a constant allegation when it comes to this side that आप में जोश ज़्यादा है और होश कम है. इसको reverse कीजिए. My single biggest contribution, if I were to put it myself, is to change the narrative that we are dumb idiots, that we don't know how to present a point of view. I don't like English as a language, but because it is the stick that is used to beat us with, I just chose to take the stick and beat them with it. That's it. Beyond that, उस भाषा से या उस संस्कृति से, we shouldn't be using संस्कृति for a non-Hindu धार्मिक culture. Anyways, उस सभ्यता से मेरा कोई लगाव नहीं है, ना कोई जुड़ाव. Never use धर्म और संस्कृति in the context of non-Hindu civilizations. That is my humble request. धर्म उनके लिए नहीं बना है, हम लोगों के लिए बना है. They don't even understand the concept of dharma, so please don't use it. 3. There is a possibility that most people think that we lead very dark, boring lives because of the work that we undertake. हमेशा संस्कृति, सभ्यता, हिंदू धर्म, क्षात्र यही सोचे जाते हैं, कितना boring होगा. No. The lesson that I think I've learned is the best way for me to reach out to the young audience is to tell them that my model works for 2 very good reasons. One, I have not and I will never contribute on the worship of Lakshmi at all. There will not be a compromise on my lifestyle under any circumstances. And I will not be dependent on anybody else for my lifestyle. This is point number 2. That gives me the ability to contribute to this movement without doing Ji Huzuri for any organization or a party. Period. That's the only way I get to retain my independence and speak the truth wherever is necessary. So at least nobody can say that I'm part of some bhajan mandali. सर क्या कर दिया सर सर क्या कर दिया सर, आए दिन गए दिन ये बोलते रहते, मुझसे वो होगा नहीं. I can never. So it is important that we create a thinking generation which understands the value of independent thought. अगर हिंदू समाज में independent thought नहीं हो सकता है तो और कहां पे होगा? We are not भेड़ बकरी, right? To quote certain faiths, we are not a flock of sheep. We don't think of our God as the shepherd. That's not us. We don't need to subscribe to these thought control policies. 3, एक तरफ हिंदुओं की जो संख्या है वो घट रही है और अब हिंदू राष्ट्र के लिए लड़ रहे हैं। संविधान का क्या आप अचार डालेंगे जब हिंदू ही नहीं रहे? दैट्स योर बेसिक क्वेश्चन, राइट? समबडी आस्क्ड दिस क्वेश्चन। यू हैव टू रियलाइज वन और टू थिंग्स हियर। अगर सत्ता आपके हाथ में है, शासन और प्रणाली आपके हाथ में है, मान लीजिए कि जनसंख्या की जो लड़ाई है वो आप हार भी जाते हैं, आप अपना बचाव कर सकते हैं टू सम एक्सटेंट। आई एम गोइंग बाय द वर्स्ट केस सिनेरियो that the fertility rates don't improve, the TFR remains as is where is, and you're looking at a gradually dwindling population. The hope is that you retain your control over the establishment until the cycle turns around. You wait for it. Two, at least to the best of my limited knowledge, and I'm assuming it's an adult audience, please correct me if I'm wrong. आपको बच्चे पैदा करने से तो किसी ने रोका नहीं है. Nobody has come and stopped you from having children. State control is over temples, not on anything else. And I don't think anybody's been able to control Hindus when it comes to this, to the best of my understanding of Hindu history. So the demographic fight is slightly different. The constitutional fight is different. इन दोनों के बीच में तालमेल तो है, I'm not denying it. But this is equally necessary. Because what you're currently witnessing is Syed Ahmad Khan's strategy in action, which has become part of the system and gradually take over that particular system. And my dear learned brother, Barrister Asaduddin Owaisi, made it abundantly clear a few days ago. I'm calling him brother because he's from Hyderabad, Bhagyanagar. This fight is equally necessary. So there are levels of battles. What you're good at, you should fight at that particular plane. You should choose your Ranubhumi and make yourself useful at that particular battleground. If at all there was any iota of idealism in my head with respect to any political organization in 2014, I don't suffer from it anymore. अगर कहीं भी थोड़ा बहुत idealism था, आज के डेट में नहीं है, which is good, because then you don't sit and pity yourself. You immediately start looking at what is the way forward, what is the action plan. Move towards the solution quickly, adapt. So what do? Then you try and invest in as many political actors as possible across the board to get the job done, because to elect a particular political organization is not your job, but to ensure that the elected party does your job is the job. As long as that clarity is there, you won't be swayed by the daily nonsense of TV debates, because their job is to prop one for the other. One does it for TRP, the other needs it for propaganda. That's it. Beyond that, there is nothing for us. There is really no value addition in any of these debates. Anyone who invests himself in a political cause more than a civilizational cause has invested in a self-defeating cause. So I'm asking you to invest in the long run. When you invest in the long run, you will then have the mental strength to actually fight a long battle. If someone thinks that, let's say, what has happened in Kashi or what is happening in Ujjain translates to retrieval of our temples, no, not at all. काशी के मंदिर के बाहर आइए, आपको हिंदू पॉपुलेशन तो नहीं दिखेगा. महाकाल के मंदिर के बाहर आइए, आपको तो हिंदू पॉपुलेशन नहीं दिखेगा. So that should be a constant reminder. That should be a constant reminder of the way forward as to what are the actual difficulties ahead. I am forced to remember that lioness, Nupur Sharma, for a different reason altogether. Rather, two reasons. I don't see what kind of a Hindu Rashtra it is where a Hindu cannot even speak up in self-defense. A Qatar can bring Bharat to its knees, which means the puppets, or let's say the strings, are not limited to within Bharat. Bahar bhi jate hain iske taar. So therefore, as a global minority and a non-Abrahamic global minority and a non-monotheistic, non-organized global minority, never forget your vulnerability. Act with that sense of realization. यहाँ इस देश के बाहर, इस भूमि के बाहर आपका कोई घर नहीं है. Everything is temporary. This is your only permanent place. अगर ये आपके हाथ से गया, यजीदियों का आज जो हशर है आपके साथ भी वही होगा. It can't get starker than that. We don't need to give examples of Persia when we have examples of Yazidis in our lifetime. 2014. Bharat did not even have and still does not have the conscious awareness of its identity to reach out to the Yazidis and say, you are a polytheistic idol worshiping community, aapko asra yahan milega, that we will take care of you. We should have been the ones to step up and say, we will do this. Because as polytheistic, murti worshipping communities, it is important for you to build alliances with such like-minded cultures and religions. That is the sense of organization that you must learn from the Abrahamic faith system. Every enemy has at least one valuable lesson to teach, or every adversary has at least one valuable lesson to teach. Learn this. I am bound to be accused of sexism here and Brahminical patriarchy. So be it. 1000 certificate मिल चुके हैं और एक सही. Doesn't matter. Men defend the civilization. Women continue the civilization. Ensure that all the girls in your family watch the Kerala story. 100% watch it. क्योंकि Kerala story जो है वो कैराना स्टोरी बन गया था एक टाइम पे. अगर 2017 नहीं होता तो वहां से तो दूसरा कश्मीर होना पक्का था. 100%. And it's not as if the situation has improved everywhere in Uttar Pradesh. Because you see, it's a long festering problem. The next virus that will seriously infect the Hindu community, and I think it is the Hindu community which is most vulnerable because of its lack of Sanatani moorings, is the woke cancer. I should clarify. तृतीय प्रकृति का अपना एक स्थान है हिंदू समाज में, because that is our traditional position. Unlike other faith systems, we are not remotely homophobic. We don't treat it as normal. We don't treat it as the mainstream. आप उसको एक्सेप्शन मानते हैं अपवाद के तौर पे, बट यू डोंट थिंक ऑफ इट एज समथिंग व्हिच मेरिट्स कैपिटल पनिशमेंट. सर के बल किसी को बिल्डिंग से गिरा के मारना, ये आपका कल्चर तो है नहीं, हमारा कल्चर तो है नहीं. सो इट इज इंपॉर्टेंट टू स्ट्राइक अ बैलेंस. वन इज टू ट्रीट देम विथ रेस्पेक्ट एंड द अदर इज टू इक्वली प्रिजर्व योर बाइनरी आइडेंटिटीज एज मेल एंड फीमेल. दोनों को कंफ्यूज करने की कोई जरूरत नहीं है. आई एम विटनेसिंग दीज थिंग्स इन कोर्ट. आई एम सीइंग हाउ पीपल आर सडनली चेंजिंग देयर प्रोफाइल्स टू ही, हिम, शी, हर, दे, देम. ये बदल रहा है अक्रॉस द बोर्ड, इन लिंक्डइन प्रोफाइल्स, ऑन फेसबुक प्रोफाइल्स, इन इंस्टाग्राम, अक्रॉस द बोर्ड. अगर आपको लगता है इसका हिंदुत्व या हिंदू समाज से कोई लेना देना नहीं है, इट विल बी योर मिस्टेक. बिकॉज दिस आइडियोलॉजी इज द ट्रोजन to enter your family as an institution, to destroy the most core institution on the basis of which the Hindu Samaj stands, which is the family structure. From what I've heard from Hindutvawadi LGBTQ activists, ऐसे बहुत सारे हैं जिनको बेदखल कर दिया जाता है the moment they prove that they're Hindutvawadi. इनका मुंह बंद कर दिया जाता है. I know these people because they come to me for help. Bharat is the ranabhumi for them, but the launch pad is Nepal. These networks have invested close to 6,000 crores. 6,000 crores at the very least to somehow capture the mind space of the next generation using this particular ideology. ये किसी के भले के लिए ये सब नहीं कर रहे हैं. The entire goal is thought control. The entire goal is language control. The entire goal is free speech control. क्योंकि अगर आपसे बोलने की जो स्वेच्छा है वो छीन ली जाए, what remains? If you can't even claim who you are as a person, then what survives, what really remains? The problem with the Hindu Samaj is हमारे reactions जो हैं extremes होते हैं. Either absolute homophobia on the one hand, or we confuse to the extent of saying male जैसा कोई चीज है ही नहीं. A Buddhijeevi said it recently that there is no concept of even a biological sex. Santulan is the name of Hindutva. Our dharma focuses on restraint, on balance, on middle path, on understanding what is the point where you say this is where Lakshman रेखा खींची जाएगी. इन positions के लिए, इन मुद्दों के लिए research करना जरूरी है. Look at the number of areas in which we need talent. Law is just about 20% of it. Social sciences, gender, humanities. इन areas में काम कौन करेगा? आप बार बार मुझे और विष्णु को थोड़ी खींच के लेके आएंगे, हर चीज पे आप ही बात करो. आप भी बोर हो जाएंगे, हम भी थक जाएंगे. Fatigue will set in कि कितने मुद्दे हम लोग हैंडल करेंगे. These are your areas. My job is to basically point out homework which I have done. The ball is in your court. Questions, please.
Namaskar, sir. In the case of civil wars and riot-like situations, how can we as civilians protect ourselves given that the law enforcing agencies and the political governments that we have chosen fail to do so?
See, it's a particularly difficult situation and I'm very happy you asked this question. आज situation ये हो चुका है कि हिंदू हित में अगर आप सो कॉल्ड हिंदू सरकार के अंडर कोई सवाल करते हैं तो ट्विटर पे लोग आप पे चिल्लाने के लिए आ जाते हैं. आपको बोल देते हैं कि आप एंटी नेशनल हो, एंटी सम फिगर हो, ये दिस एंड ऑल दैट. आई थिंक दिस इज ये एक मंथन का दौर है जब लोग समझेंगे कि पॉलिटिकल हिंदुत्व काफी नहीं है. सामाजिक हिंदुत्व की जरूरत है, क्योंकि अगर आपने हिंदुत्व को पूरी तरह से पॉलिटिकल अरीना में आउटसोर्स कर दिया और अपने पास आपने कोई कंट्रोल नहीं रखा, देन यू आर एट देयर मर्सी। और उनको पता है कि उनके अलावा आपके पास और कोई चारा या विकल्प नहीं है। तो पॉलिटिशियंस या फिर पावर का एक फंडामेंटल फीचर है, चाहे वो किसी भी सरकार की हो या किसी भी पार्टी की हो, दैट इट एक्सपेक्ट्स 100% लॉयल्टी, अनडाइंग लॉयल्टी, अनक्वेश्चनिंग लॉयल्टी। Nobody is an exception to this. And वो चाहेंगे कि आप हमेशा हर चीज के लिए उन पे निर्भर रहें। आत्मनिर्भरता की जो बात हो रही है वो सामाजिक हिंदुत्व में उसकी सबसे ज्यादा जरूरी है, ताकि सोसाइटी, हिंदू सोसाइटी अपने कंट्रोल में कुछ चीजें रखें, जैसे आत्मरक्षा। क्योंकि पुलिस बॉलीवुड की तरह लेट आएगी, और अगर आएगी भी तो पहले हिंदू को मारेगी। दिल्ली में जो पुलिस हिंदुओं को बचा नहीं पाई, वो कहां किसको बचाएगी? एंड आई डोंट थिंक द कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन takes away your power or your right to self-defense. आत्मरक्षा is your fundamental right. But आत्मरक्षा के लिए अगर एक मॉब आपके घर के बाहर खड़ी हो जाती है, where is the सामाजिक संगठन here? मैंने बहुत सारे ऐसे कॉन्वर्सेशंस में देखा है कि हिंदू सबसे पहले होते हैं कि बजरंग दल थोड़ा ज्यादा एक्सट्रीम है, इन्हीं की वजह से बहुत सारे तनाव जो है पैदा हो जाते हैं, as if it is otherwise a heaven of brotherhood and peace and harmony. It's paradise of idiots. Who are these people? Which world are they living in? They must be living in Jorbag. Like, even if you live in Jorbag, well, you have the Karbala Maidan immediately in the opposite, in front of you. एक बार वहां पे जुलूस निकल जाए, देखते हैं ब्रदरहुड कहाँ होता है. I've seen that happen. 2016 में या 15 में I was in Jorbag for a legal conference. I was meeting a senior lawyer. As usual, Karbala में कुछ हो गया, कॉन्फ्रेंस को 5 मिनट में खत्म कर दिया, घर को लॉक कर दिया, सब भागे. These are country's top lawyers. छतरपुर के बाहर है खानपुर, सॉरी सैनिक फार्म्स के बाहर है खानपुर. अब देखते हैं वहां के लोग कितने सेफ हैं. वी हैव फॉरगॉटन द नीड फॉर कम्युनिटी डिफेंस. आपके पास कम्युनिटी डिफेंस स्ट्रक्चर्स नहीं है, और आप जितने पढ़े लिखे होते हैं और जितने अर्बन होते हैं, उतना ही कम आपका सेंस ऑफ कम्युनिटी डिफेंस होता है. एंड दिस इज अ पेक्यूलियर हिंदू विकृति. किसी और के पास ये प्रॉब्लम नहीं होती है. दिस इज ओनली अ हिंदू प्रॉब्लम, बिकॉज यू हैव सेड, जितना आप एजुकेटेड हैं, आपके मुंह से ये 3 शब्द निकलने चाहिए: मैं लिबरल हूं, आई बिलीव इन लॉ एंड ऑर्डर, एंड आई एम प्रोग्रेसिव. दीज आर योर मंत्रास. घर के बाहर एक मॉब खड़ा हो जाए और ये जो नशा है उतर जाएगा 5 मिनट में. सो वर्क ऑन दिस. स्टॉप डिसरेस्पेक्टिंग योर ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस व्हिच प्रोटेक्ट यू इन द स्ट्रीट. दे डोंट नीड टू प्रोटेक्ट यू, क्योंकि आप तो इनकी इज्जत नहीं करते, तो ये आपको बचा क्यों रहे? बिकॉज आप में उनको हिंदू दिखता है. यू मे नॉट सी योरसेल्फ दैट वे. You may call yourself secular, this and all that, but आप में उनको हिंदू दिखता है, period. जो आपको मारने आ रहा है उसको भी आप में हिंदू दिखता है, और जो आपको बचाने आ रहा है उसको भी आप में हिंदू दिखता है. Now you decide who you want to respect. These are such basic fundamentals that it's problematic that Hindus have to be told this, कि आपके बचाव में क्या अच्छा है, क्या बुरा है.
My name is Siddharth Sharma and I am from Lloyd Law College. My question is that if you've looked into the case of Vishnu Tiwari versus State of UP of 2001, you will have seen that the SC Act was abused to put an innocent man in jail, and even after 20 years, even after certain changes that would establish.
You're referring to the SC Act?
Yes, sir.
जी बताइए.
So even after 20 years, it is being abused, especially by certain politically motivated people, to threaten Hindus. So what would you suggest is the legal remedy for that?
Legal remedy से पहले, the first thing that we need to have a very open discussion on. Urban Naxalism पे बात हो रही है, लेफ्टिज्म पे बात चल रही है, कम्युनिज्म पे बात चल रही है, जिहादिज्म पे बात चल रही है, अम्बेडकरिज्म पे बात जरूरी है. It is important to start talking about it. I know there are quite a few of my videos, my own videos floating from 2015, and I've publicly said this at least in 2 places, that I've changed my position thanks to greater reading. I have said this and I'll repeat this with the operative words being mixed bag. Dr. Ambedkar is a mixed bag. And those who claim to be Ambedkarites are extremely deadly, because there are some who believe that no discussion on the constitution is complete without him. Maybe so. And there are those who believe that everything that he said with respect to Hindu history and Dalit history is 100% true. मेरे लिए ये मानना थोड़ा कठिन हो जाता है पढ़ने के बाद. दिल्ली में जो शपथ दोहराए गए थे 10,000 लोगों के सामने, ये इन शपथ को सुनने के बाद लोगों को बहुत गुस्सा आया कि ये तो एंटी हिंदू है, क्या है ये है एंड ऑल दैट. बट ये इन्होंने इस शपथ का इजाद नहीं किया था, ये तो ऑलरेडी एक जो शपथ है उसको दोहरा रहे थे. सो आई वुड ओनली रिक्वेस्ट वन थिंग, व्हाई शुड आई लोड यू और लेट्स से फॉइस्ट माय ओपिनियंस ऑन यू. आप छोड़ दीजिए मेरे ओपिनियंस को. आई विल ओनली रिक्वेस्ट यू टू डू 3 or 4 थिंग्स. रीड एवरीथिंग दैट डॉक्टर अंबेडकर सेड ऑन हिंदुइज्म फर्स्ट. उसको ऊपर से लेके नीचे तक आप पढ़ लीजिए उसको. बिकॉज पीपल हु आर हिंदुत्ववादीज, उनका एक फेवरेट ट्रिक होता है कि आप अंबेडकर को साइड करेंगे सिर्फ इस्लाम के संदर्भ में, लेकिन अंबेडकर ने हिंदुइज्म के संदर्भ में क्या कहा है, श्री राम के बारे में क्या कहा है, श्री कृष्ण के बारे में क्या कहा है, यशोदा माँ के बारे में क्या कहा है, उसको पढ़ लीजिए. उसके बाद आप डिसाइड कीजिए कि आप हिंदुत्ववादी और अंबेडकरवादी एक ही साथ हो सकते हैं या नहीं हो सकते हैं. ये निर्णय मैं आप पे छोड़ देता हूँ.
When we ask for Hindu Rashtra, who are we actually asking it for? Because on the other side, we see that the Hindus themselves are not aware. We see that Tamils want a different state. We see Muslims asking for a different state. They've done it previously. We see Sikhs asking for a separate state of Khalistan. So when we ask for a different Hindu state, what are our chances of actually getting it? And who are we actually asking it for? Will it be even possible? Because I don't see, even if like 100 people are sitting here, even if 50 are aware about Hindu Rashtra and actually work for it, I think it will be possible, but I'm not sure even if 50 work for it. So how are we actually aiming for Hindu Rashtra to be real?
ठीक, okay. It's a good question. What do you think is the population of Jews in the world? It's 12.5 million. That's 1.25 crores. That must be less than the number of Indians that Indians produce each year. They have managed to protect their interests despite being landless orphans for 2000 years. Okay? Why are we discussing LGBTQ issues in a country of 1.4 billion? What do you think is the best possible number of LGBTQ community in this country? The best estimates say roughly 7 crores. Out of a population of 140 crores, 7 crores is the population of this particular group. History tells you that numbers are important, no doubt. But beyond that, what is important is that a vocal minority is better than a silent majority, because it constantly speaks about its interest and it will ensure that you toe their line. Most of us who speak today in the context of LGBTQ communities are extremely scared of being accused of homophobia. आपके लैंग्वेज में एक फिल्टर आ चुका है despite the number of these people being only 7 crores. Why? Because they have done a fantastic job of advocating their cause. They have done a fantastic job of constantly being at it. Relentless attacks. Rightly so. 3, I am a Sanatani optimist. And I believe that what we are doing is at the surface level. Surface के नीचे बहुत सारा काम हो रहा है जिसकी वजह से आपको ये सारी चीजें दिख रही हैं. Which is to say, Hindu belief is that everything that happens is the product of the prayers of rishis and munis. I'm a very conscious believer in it. We are all at the end of the day only nimitta, instruments. So that is the philosophical answer to it. But the more practical answer to it is, I'll go back to what Shri Pushpendra ji pointed out at the beginning. Nobody could have imagined having this kind of a conversation in the Constitutional Club of India in Lutyens, Delhi in 2014. सोच के देखिए, आपको जगह भी नहीं मिलती. भगवा को देखिए, आपको भगा देंगे. So there is a change. So our job is to accelerate that change and push it even further. I've seen youngsters, especially post 2020, lockdown, according to me, played a significant role in people changing their minds about Sanatana Dharma. क्योंकि सब लोगों को घर पे बैठना पड़ा. What did they do? कोई नए पिक्चर्स तो रिलीज नहीं हो रहे थे, नेटफ्लिक्स पे भी कुछ नया नहीं आ रहा था, तो क्या कर रहे थे? यूट्यूब में सब लोग जाके वीडियोस देख रहे थे. अब कहीं ना कहीं से तो मेरा काला चेहरा तो नजर आ जाएगा, विष्णु जी का चेहरा नजर आ जाएगा, आनंद का, पुष्पेंद्र जी का, राइट? They started consuming the content. उसी टाइम पे फॉर द फर्स्ट टाइम इन दूरदर्शन आफ्टर 30 years द गवर्नमेंट रिफ्रेशिंगली स्टार्टेड यूजिंग इट्स चाणक्य नीति, और एक ही टाइम पे महाभारत, रामायण और चाणक्य चला दी. बच्चों को बोला तुम इसको देखो बैठ के, यू हैव नथिंग एल्स टू डू, तुम्हें इसको देखना पड़ेगा. हाउ मेनी पीपल फेल इन लव विद चाणक्य सीरीज? यू नो, दोस हु सॉ देमसेल्व्स एज मार्क्सिस्ट एंड कम्युनिस्ट्स प्रायर टू 2020 लॉकडाउन. 21 में जब मेरे बुक टूर के दौरान मैं डिफरेंट सिटीज जा रहा था, दे वुड कम एंड टेल मी, Sir, we did not know of your existence prior to the lockdown. We watched your videos, we saw other videos. I am ashamed of my previous opinions. ये बहुत सारी जगहों पे हो रहा है. I've given this example. Parents are Marxists, children have become Hindutvaadis. And they've come and asked, how do we change our parents? How do we follow Sanatana Dharma in this household? I only had to say, Prahlad was born to Hiranyakashipu. Change it. Very few people, actually very few children get the good fortune or the bad fortune the way you see to reform their parents. करो बैठ के रिवर्स घर वापसी करो आप. आशा की किरणें बहुत हैं, which is why despite my schedule I make it a point to go on the ground and talk to people, because Twitter और social media से आपको सिर्फ नेगेटिविटी मिलता है. जहां पे चेंज हो रहा है, जहां पे परिवर्तन हो रहा है, वो आपको ठीक से समझ में नहीं आए. ग्राउंड इंटरेक्शंस का सबसे बड़ा स्ट्रेंथ ये होता है दैट आपको समझ में आ जाता है कि आप किसी दीवार के साथ बात नहीं कर रहे हैं, जो आप बात कर रहे हैं वो लोगों को जाके पहुंच रही है. सो डोंट लूज होप, बिकॉज यू आर आवर होप. डोंट लूज होप. हिंदूज डू नॉट हैव द लग्जरी ऑफ बीइंग होपलेस एट ऑल. ये आर्या पार की लड़ाई है, तो डोंट लूज होप एट ऑल.
हमारे जजेस हमारे फेवर में डिसीजन नहीं देते, जबकि मैक्सिमम जज हिंदू होते हैं. हमारे ब्यूरोक्रेट हमारे मंदिरों पे कब्जा कर लेते हैं, जैसे आपने कहा कि बहुत सारे उनको सोर्स ऑफ इनकम वहां से मिल जाता है. हमारे पॉलिटिशियन कानून नहीं बनाते, जबकि वो मैक्सिमम पॉलिटिशियन जो सो कॉल्ड सेक्युलर हिंदू है
जी.
तो इनके पीछे फोर्स क्या काम कर रही है? क्या अरब कंट्रीज से पैसा आता है इनके पास? इनके असली कॉन्स्पिरेसी जो वो हमने पूरे दिन में डिस्कस नहीं की, क्योंकि क्या ऐसी चीजें हैं जो इन लोगों को ये सारा खेल कर रही हैं? वो इतना बड़ा पैसा है, इतनी बड़ी कहीं ना कहीं ताकतें हैं.
If someone were to ask what is my biggest strength, बोल के ना बोलना is my biggest strength. तो मैं आपके प्रश्न से पूरी तरह से तो सहमत नहीं हूं. Let's leave it at that. I will give you an answer in as general terms as possible, and I would expect the audience to be intelligent enough to draw their own conclusions. 3 decades से लेफ्ट का, इंटरनेशनल लेफ्ट का भारत में इन्वेस्टमेंट है एट द वेरी लीस्ट. 70s से लेके बहुत ही सीरियस इन्वेस्टमेंट है ह्यूमैनिटीज में, लीगल सेक्टर में और डेवलपमेंट के सेक्टर में. इसीलिए जितने भी एनजीओस होते हैं, सिविल सोसाइटी के जो ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस होते हैं, इनका होता है. तो एक नेटवर्क बन जाता है which is civil society, legal teams, then those legal teams moving from being lawyers to occupying other positions. Okay, फिर उनके साथ जर्नलिस्ट जुड़ जाते हैं. नेता की अपनी कोई विचारधारा यूजुअली नहीं होती है, तो वहां पे सिस्टम को चलाने के लिए आप चारा डालते हैं. So that is the easiest way to get. So of all the people, the least ideologically committed is always the politician. इसमें एक्सेप्शन सिर्फ 2 तरह के लोग होते हैं, the jihadi politician and the Marxist politician. इनको खरीदना मुश्किल होता है, that is a fact. तो बचे कौन? आपको जवाब मिल गया, राइट? इसको तोड़ना इसलिए मुश्किल है, एटलीस्ट फॉर सम टाइम, क्योंकि बहुत सारे लोगों के करियर्स इसमें जुड़े हैं. यहाँ सिर्फ विचारधारा की बात नहीं हो रही, यहाँ पे जीविका की भी बात हो रही है. सर, आपने लोगों के जेब पे हाथ रख दिया. जब FCRA पे टाइट कर रहे हैं आप, पब्लिक कह रही है आपके मूवी को हम देखेंगे नहीं, आपका जो प्रोपेगेंडा चलता है एंटी हिंदू और एंटी भारत, हम इसको अभी पैसा नहीं देंगे, नहीं देखेंगे, तब जाके इनको समझ में आए. तो आज व्हाट इज एक्चुअली वर्किंग इन हिंदू एडवांटेज इज हिंदू जागरूकता, which is showing itself in Hindu saying we will not consume any content from anywhere or any product from anywhere which is against us. तब जाके सब लाइन पे आ रहे हैं. बट इन पे अभी भरोसा मत कीजिए, क्योंकि जब सत्ता पलट होगा तो फिर से ये अपने रंग पे आ जाए. So which is why what Vishnu said and what Pushpendra ji said, it is not empty thought. What are they clearly saying? Political Hindutva अस्थायी होता है, whereas rather it is temporary, whereas सामाजिक Hindutva is more permanent. जब आप हिंदू जागरूकता को ज्यादा करेंगे, ये प्रेशर उन पे कॉन्स्टेंटली बना रहेगा कि सत्ता किसी की भी हो. अब हिंदुत्व तो मेन स्ट्रीम हो चुका है और रहेगा, और अभी जो सत्ता चलेगी और जो राजनीति चलेगी वो सिर्फ कॉम्पिटिटिव हिंदुत्व की चलेगी, विच इज जो भी आएगा हमारे इशारों पे नाचेगा. दैट इज हाउ द अदर साइड हैज प्लेड द गेम, विच इज व्हाई माय इन्वेस्टमेंट इज इन द सोसाइटी सेइंग अगर आज मैंने इनमें इन्वेस्ट किया तो 25 साल के बाद तो एटलीस्ट क्लियर रिस्पॉन्सेस होंगे, बिकॉज लेफ्ट भी बच्चों में इन्वेस्ट कर रही है, क्योंकि ये जान चुके हैं कि अगले 10 साल के लिए इनके हाथ में सत्ता वापस नहीं आएगा. तो ये लॉन्गर गेम खेल रहे हैं. हमें भी वो खेल खेलना पड़ेगा एज अपोज टू बीइंग लॉस्ट इन द करंट विक्ट्रीज. ये ऊपर नीचे जाना ये तो चलता रहेगा. फोकस ऑन द लॉन्ग बैटल, द लॉन्ग वॉर, दैट इज ऑलवेज द बॉटम लाइन.
मैं डॉक्टर अखिलेश शर्मा हूँ. मैं फैकल्टी एट हिंदू यूनिवर्सिटी ऑफ अमेरिका, where we are conducting some courses like related to classical Hinduism, Vedanta philosophy, and because third subject is Ayurveda, which is my specialty, so we started with that. मेरा एक सजेशन था, जो आपने सामाजिक acquaintance बनाने की बात की, I think that is very meaningful and powerful. This was just my suggestion कि we should make a consortium of people like Pushpendra ji, पवन सिन्हा जी, पीपल लाइक यू, इन सब का एक कंसोर्शियम बनाइए, अपने आप में एक फैकल्टी क्रिएट कीजिए, एंड वी शुड स्टार्ट टू डू मास लेवल अवेयरनेस प्रोग्राम्स थ्रू हिंदू प्लेटफॉर्म्स like Hindu temples could be one nodal centers where we want to start putting these thoughts together. So we should put this together, I think. Nope.
Sir, I'm Lieutenant Commander Bharat Singh. I'm an advocate, practicing advocate. I have two questions, sir. What, according to you, are the structured steps and measures that we or the establishment should take towards moving towards a Hindu Rashtra? And secondly, sir, if ever in the future, if there is likely to be a bloodbath, possible bloodbath, going to consequences of
Change the question. Reword it. You're a lawyer. Reword it. I'm sure you can do it.
historically, strong masculine men have been responsible of protecting families and societies. Don't you think, or what's your opinion, that the recent laws pertaining to minorities, caste-based laws, feminist laws are holding back these masculine men and the Hindu family system? What's your opinion on these two questions?
So, in terms of the structured way forward, I'll start from the society. One is, of course, insisting on greater Hindu consciousness within the families is one. But two, somehow I am desperate to stop exodus of Hindus from our country. I'm desperate to stop it for two reasons. I'll give you an example. So there is a very upmarket locality in Chennai called Mylapore. Okay, it's almost the equivalent of, let's say, Vasant Vihar or Chorbagh in Delhi. It's full of elderly couples in their 60s and 70s. The children are in United States. So the children take comfort from the fact that we are sending money. My parents are living a good lifestyle. So parents after 65 start needing house helps. So these guys across the board started engaging house helps. उसमें से एक family में एक driver जो है, he's been with the family for close to 25 years. उस driver के बच्चे को इस couple ने पढ़ाया. एक दिन ये couple इस ड्राइवर के साथ गाड़ी में जा रहे थे, उसका बेटा भी उस गाड़ी में था. इनके मुंह से कहीं 3 करोड़ का ये शब्द निकल गया. बच्चे को ये लगा कि इनके घर में 3 करोड़ पैसा है. प्लीज गूगल एंड सी. द बॉय सेंड्स हिज पेरेंट्स अवे एंड bludgeoned the couple to death. A family that has been cultivated by this couple ultimately proved to be untrustworthy. अब इसके बाद बच्चों का रिएक्शन क्या था? अब वो तो अमेरिका छोड़ के यहां नहीं आएंगे. सो इन दैट लोकेलिटी एवरीबडी इज डिसाइडेड हम माता पिता को यूएस लेके जाएंगे. अब वहां से घर किसके हाथ में जाएगा? तो घर ये बेचने के लिए तैयार हो गए. एंड साउथ में अब ये ट्रेंड हो रहा है दैट गल्फ के मनी के वजह से पीपल आर पूलिंग इन रिसोर्सेस टू थ्रो मनी एट वॉट एवर प्राइस दैट इज आस्क्ड, ताकि रियल एस्टेट इनके हाथ में आ जाए. जब आप विकेट करने के लिए तैयार हो जाते हैं, खरीदने वाला ऑलरेडी है वहां पे और वो अपने लिए नहीं खरीद रहा है, वो अपनी कम्युनिटी के लिए खरीद रहा है. सो द स्ट्रैटेजी विल बी दे विल कम. आपके रहने के तौर तरीके और उनके तरीके अलग हैं और आप में गट्स नहीं है उनको रोकने के लिए, तो पहले इस जगह से एक फैमिली जाएगी, फिर दूसरी फैमिली जाएगी, ऐसे ही होगा. सो इन प्लेसेस लाइक जयनगर इन बैंगलोर, इन प्लेसेस लाइक माइलापुर इन चेन्नई, इन ऑल दीज प्लेसेस, whoever I can reach out to, I'm telling them, don't be such myopic idiots. Find a way to retain your presence here. This is the primary call right now. वरना आप किसके लिए लड़ रहे हैं? सब यहाँ से पलायन कर रहे हैं. तो what is the point? It's not as if they're being kicked out. They're going on their own. This is not what we are fighting for at the end of the day. So in South, fortunately, because there are still some temples left, मंदिर के बाहर सबसे पहला जो सर्कल होता है वो ब्राह्मणों का सर्कल होता है, क्योंकि वहां पे पंडित रहते हैं. It is called अग्रहारम. Agraharam. Haram is the garland around the temple. Agra is first. Most of the Agraharams in Tamil Nadu are now Muslim dominated. In places of Sanskrit learning such as Kumbakonam, Tanjavur, Madurai, all these places. These are places where barely 70 years ago there used to be equivalents of southern Kashi. Gone. अब सुनने में आ रहा है कि हरिद्वार में भी सिचुएशन कुछ अलग नहीं है, उत्तराखंड में सिचुएशन कुछ अलग नहीं है, राइट? First thing, stay your ground, don't leave. Second, जो है उनको बचाने के लिए आपको कम्युनिटी डिफेंस ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस की जरूरत पड़ेगी. आई एम नॉट गोइंग टू गिव यू सम esoteric constitutional solutions. Street is where the battle is being fought right now. So focus on that. Which means क्षात्र की जरूरत है. आप वेदांत पढ़ाइए जाइए, then you keep teaching Upanishad, keep doing all of that. I don't have a problem with it. But if it is not going to create Purushatva in you, what is the point? What is the point? All the other varnas can live peacefully only when there is a kshatriya with a sword in his hand. That is why kshatriya dharma is actually the supreme dharma. So that is one. Two, I don't think all legislations which are meant to protect women are necessarily anti-men. Okay? But gradually उनके abuse का जो scope है वो judiciary को भी समझ में आ रहा है. जैसे 498 का जितना abuse होता है वो समझ में आ रहे हो. So there is a move towards gender neutrality to say that rights must be equally available to men. But you see, there is only one point to which I will hold the law and the system responsible for emasculating you. Beyond that, it's not as if you are doing anything to retain your masculinity. The test of masculinity is not just to produce children. I'm sorry to say this. The test of masculinity is also whether you can stand up to protect them when the situation calls for it, and whether you can protect your community. The third book of my series, the third book will focus on the motivation and the triggers behind the Sangathan movement. Because what we need at this point is Sangathan 2.0. And isko samajhna bahut hi zaruri hai. We need, so it's not as if any of our problems are new. Nothing is new, by the way. The only thing that is new is that जितना हिंदुत्व 1920 में था उतना 2023 में नहीं है. That is the only difference. Problems remain the same. Your ability to understand them and your ability to deal with them has gone from bad se badtar. That's it. Otherwise, 47 wouldn't have happened, right? So I'm hoping to draw some lessons from history because I don't have any training in humanities on my own. I'm not trained in abstract thinking beyond a point. So whatever it is that I have to do, I'm looking for inspiration from history to teach me a few lessons, which I can at least pack it and say, here are your solutions to your problems. Or at least, वहां पे आपको ये करना चाहिए था, आपने नहीं किया, at least अब तो करो. Unfortunately, on that front, I still don't have answers. I hope to have answers by the time I launch the next book, this third book the next year. Then I'll be in a much better position to answer some of these questions because it deals with 1925 to 1946. Dravidianism, the birth of Khalistani movement is not 1980. It is after the separate electorates of 1909. Because once the Muslims started asking for separate votes and separate electorates, the Britishers started telling these people, आप हिंदू धर्म से अलग हैं, आपका अपना एक धर्म है, and you start asking for electorates. वहां से इन्होंने अपनी हिस्ट्री को भी रेट्रोस्पेक्टिवली चेंज करना शुरू किया. विजुअल रिप्रेजेंटेशन से लेके सब कुछ चेंज होना शुरू किया ओनली आफ्टर द let's say early 1900s. So that movement starts. Communist movement, RSS in 1925. Communist International Comintern was set up in March 1919. ये सारा उसी दौर से शुरू होता है. 46 तक पाकिस्तान बनना शुरू हो जाता है because it has become a reality. तो 25 से लेके 46 तक क्या हुआ, खिलाफत के बाद से लेके डायरेक्ट एक्शन डे तक 16 अगस्त 1946 तक क्या हुआ, दैट इज द मोस्ट क्रूशियल पीरियड. जितने भी मिस्टेक्स तब हमने किए थे, मेरे हिसाब से हम उन मिस्टेक्स को दोहरा रहे हैं अंडर अ हिंदू गवर्नमेंट. थैंक यू.